Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Commentary as Magic Stream on today's Sunday, October 29th, 2023. I am, as always, Grandpaws.
Big G's?
Arquette and Ivory will not be joining us today on account of sickness. We've told him to go to bed and rest up.
It's a rough one going around right now. Take care of yourselves.
Get your shots, etc.
Yep.
All that. No rabies allowed at CCG tournaments.
Hey,
Yes? Go on, I'd like to hear where you're going with a confrontational tone like that. Please explain to me the benefits and virtues of allowing rabies at a CCG tournament.
look, if you're not frothing at the mouth trying to win,
Are
or even trying to win,
are you trying hard enough?
That's a fair point. All right, I stand corrected.
So other than that tidbit of wisdom, what's our discussion for today?
We're going back to school.
Oof.
Yeah, oof. A little bit of oof.
how big of an oof would you say this is?
Well, let's just say that by the end of this stream, we will have several methods of calculating the exact area and volume of this oof.
Like, let me explain how big this oof is. I think the three of us, during the writing of this, have all learned something. That's how big of an oof this is.
It started as just a fun idea of, hey, there's numbers that are used in deck building and in tournament preparation and organization. Maybe it would be kind of fun and useful to share some of these numbers. And that statement is true. Asterisk. Because the math behind a lot of what we're about to talk about is more complex than we have time to cover in a stream.
But fortunately, we found several online calculators that will help you with this.
Exactly. So today is all about numbers. Specifically, this is tournament math for nerds. Hi, we're nerds. Twilight is also a nerd. Look how happy she is. Oh, how little she knows.
See, that's even funnier considering the context of where the screenshot came from.
What episode was that?
This is lesson 0.
Oh boy.
Specifically, this is Rainbow trashing AJ's barn.
Is this the if I can't find the friendship?
No,
problem?
this is like, I bet she hates AJ's guts.
How wonderful. Yes, that one. Okay, got it. Okay. There's some of this that is going to be math and numbers talk that's going to take place within a game, and there's other parts of this that's math and numbers talk that takes place before a game, and then there's other parts that takes place purely on the judges' side, and this is kind of the latter. Aura, I think this was your addition here, so...
You mean between games?
Yes, between games, sure.
That is the wrong slide.
That is the wrong slide. That is our splash page.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So those of you who have thoroughly read the comprehensive rules may have noticed the thing about there's a little section called randomness and random choice. We tell you that you're not allowed to use 2d6 for random choices. Why is this? Well, let's take a look at what happens when you roll 2d6. I'm going to roll a blue d6 and a red d6. And this little chart on the left here says what happens when you add them together. Now, you may notice that there's a lot of 7s in that chart. And that's what the little chart on the right side says. You're going to notice something. 1, push the button.
Press the button, Kronk.
Pull the lever, Kronk. Okay, 1, ironically, there's no 1s. And 2, there are way more 7s than anything else. So, if you are directed to make a random choice of, say, 7 targets, because, I don't know, Chaos Magic Blast, or Poppy, or really anything else that says random, don't roll 2d6. And if your opponent insists on rolling 2d6, call a judge, because this is bad. You will never, ever, ever pick whatever is selected as item number 1, and you are way more likely to pick item number 7. So just don't do this, okay? Roll a d20 or something, and if it's bigger than the number you need, then just roll it again.
Am I allowed the cat from Dev Random?
Okay, look, I know we said this was tournament math for nerds.
Yes.
But that's taking it a level further. Nerd.
Yeah, generally you're gonna see something like that referred to as a bell curve, because that's kind of what it looks like. It kind of looks like a bell, and as you increase the number of options, it will look even more like a bell.
It actually turns out that if you keep adding d6s to this, it forms, in fact, a normal curve.
And a normal curve, graphed like this, is in fact not an equal distribution.
Yeah.
It is a weighted distribution.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, I would actually go so far as to say if your opponent insists on using 2d6 and they do not back down on this, that's almost intentional cheating.
You can show them this slide. You should print out a copy of this slide and bring it with you to every tournament just in case. Alternatively, just bring a set of polyhedral dice.
Yeah, having a set of the 7 polyhedral dice is always nice. Of course, you can always go to your local game store and dig around in their big old jar of dice. I guarantee they have one somewhere, and pick the colors you like.
Okay, now most of us who have played any variety of dice game before are going to at least be somewhat familiar with the idea of weighted distributions with 2d6. It's still a good fundamental topic to talk about. Let's talk about a different type of probability. Let's say you want to know the odds of drawing a particular card, or at least one of some number of particular cards in your deck by a set turn. This is most commonly used when a player is trying to figure out if they go first or second in a game, what are the odds that they're going to have one piece that's going to allow them to flip their main character, especially if that main character is confront to flip, by turn 2.
Yeah. So on the next slide, we'll talk about what specifically that means. But this is basically the key to knowing how your deck is going, or how consistent your deck is going to be. There's a Wikipedia link here. We'll release the slides after, of course, if you want to actually read into any of this. But there's a Wikipedia link that describes how this actually works, and because doing all this math is hard, there's an online calculator that'll do this for you. And we've translated the names that this thing uses into more familiar topics, like, the number of cards in your deck. Yeah.
Right. So we'll see. Are we actually going to see an example of this being done on the next slide? Or okay, yes, we are. Okay. So when you are using a calculator to determine these odds, which, by the way, is going to be called a hypergeometric calculator or hypergeometric distribution, as the slide says, you need to know 4 things. You need to know population size, number of successes in population, the sample size, and the number of successes in the sample. And like Ara said, we've got terminology here that's going to be more relevant for the game itself. So let's take a look at an example. Let's talk about entry, okay? People have talked quite a bit about how much entry should you put in your deck.
Now, I want to stop for a moment here. What do you mean by entry? So, what entry means here is whatever you believe your deck needs to get off the ground. If you're running, say, a Nurturing Nature deck, this means the appropriate things that you will need to confront, usually on turn 2, to get her flipped over and get your deck online and start getting things moving. In some cases, this will mean one of the cards that gets you into your off color. In some cases, whatever you need to flip and get your deck moving.
Right.
So in Nurturing Nature's case, this is not just, a blue friend. It's stick. It's any 2-power friend with appropriate Rex, etc. Stuff like that.
Right. Featherweight could come into here. It could come into play here.
Absolutely.
If you're playing a control deck that has an alternate flip condition, for example, if you're running Tempest Shadow or if you're running Spell for that, you might be more interested in seeing a particular card that's going to give you an advantage early, like an action token generator, an AT generator. You want to see a Factory Jack, you want to see a Trixie, or you want to see a Starlight in your opening hand. Okay, well that can be entry in this case, if that's how you want to think about it. The point is, we are trying to isolate a subsection of the cards in our deck that have some particular requirement that we really, really want to see.
And preferably see them as soon as possible.
Right. Okay, so we're going to assume, in this case, that you are playing the most favorable deck possible to be able to draw this desired card, or at least one of these desired cards early in the game. When it comes to deck size.
I mean, okay, sure. I was about to say, because if you're going to optimize for being guaranteed to play a friend that is in an off-color turn 1, you run a nice calm ordinary day, but that's not very good. Sure. The common knowledge is that you generally want to run about 8 copies of whatever you need to get off the ground. And of course, you're going to draw 6 cards for your opening hand.
Right. So why is it that we do this? Well, let's look at the math. Using this calculator, with a population of 45...
That's your deck size.
Right? A sample size of 6, how many cards we're drawing, which should really be 7, by the way, because we're also assuming, doing this by turn 2.
Maybe. Sometimes it'll be 6, sometimes it'll be 7. It depends a little bit on what you're up to.
Sure. And the number of possible successes within the population, in this case, running 8 entry. The calculator tells us 71.5% of the time, you will have one or more of these cards that meet this qualification in your opening hand. Asterisk. There's going to be a couple asterisks throughout this.
There's a few. Like the asterisks are just like stacked on top of each other until they're so small that you can't see them.
Right.
Right. But that's just your initial opening hand. That's the first 6 cards you draw. Right? But if you pull those 6 cards out and you're just like, wow, this is terrible. I can't use this. We have a way out.
We have a mulligan.
We have a mulligan. And so, in the 28.5% time that you don't get one of those cards, you can take a mulligan. And then you restart. You, of course, put your entire hand back into your deck, shuffle your deck, and then draw 6 new cards. And on these 6 new cards, you have that exact same 71.5% chance. So, really, what you're doing is you're taking because we only allow you to do 1 mulligan, you're taking the possibility that you got what you needed in your first hand, or you did a mulligan and got what you needed in your second hand. So you have to add those 2 together. As you can see on the bottom, as long as you get a green result, you're in the happy zone, and then everything is good. If you get in the red zone, then you're sad, and you have to hope that you get entry.
Of course, there's also the chance that you get your 1 entry and your other 5 cards are completely useless. But,
of course,
don't put that many useless cards in your deck.
Right. Now, you might be looking at this and saying, well, hold on. there's still about an 8% chance that after a mulligan, in my opening hand, I don't have entry. Why wouldn't I just include more entry? Why would I not want to see 100% entry guaranteed? Well,
then you're running a nice, calm, ordinary day.
Correct.
You would have to have
Don't run a nice, calm, ordinary day.
40 entry cards in your deck to guarantee entry.
Yes.
That seems like a bad deck.
There is some amount of risk that is going to be inherent in any game that has randomization. Minimizing that risk is a viable and laudable strategy. Eliminating that risk is not. Not 100% of the time, anyway.
Right. There is always a chance that little C Poppy will just frown, and you will go 20 cards deep before you find the first thing that lets you get anywhere.
It happens. It's terrible.
It does happen sometimes. It's rare, but it does happen. And then if you play a card game that allows you to do more mulligans or changes the number of cards that you do on each mulligan, you can see the recipe here for how you would compute your odds of getting what you need to go. Magic makes you draw one fewer card each mulligan.
I think you can go all the way down to like 0 cards technically.
That seems bad.
Maybe you're limited to 1. I don't know.
Okay, so back to the like turbo nerd thing. If I draw -1 cards, that means I get to draw my whole deck, right?
No.
Why not?
Overflow.
We don't have any undefined behavior. Actually, we have a little bit of undefined behavior. We almost have no undefined behavior in this game.
Now, looking in this general happy zone, this would be saying that 8% of the time you're going to draw a hand that is not going to have this entry, right? Which means that approximately 1 out of every 10 games you play, that's how it works, right? Well, probability is a little more wonky than that. If you are playing 7 games individually isolated from each other and are not caring about the successes continuously across those games, then yes, technically that is correct. If you are combining all of those together and looking at the total odds that in any one of those 7 games you have not drawn the entry, then math starts getting weird.
Yeah. This also gets a lot more complicated if you need a more interesting startup. So let's say we're going all the way back into Premiere. Please no. And we're playing Rainbow Dash Wins. Or some variant thereof.
Oh, so we need not only a card that is playable off of an unflipped Rainbow Dash, but also a Troublemaker?
Yeah. This then gets a lot more complicated.
There are still calculators that will do this for you. They are...
I've tried to write my own one of these. You have to be extremely careful to get this correct. Because this will very quickly direct you to crazy and bad results.
For more material or information or future reading, please consult your local university statistician.
Just use an SMT solver.
Ask ChatGPT.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, actually, it might be.
There's a non-zero chance, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is getting a little bit maybe in depth. Let's look at some more general numbers, just so you've got a reference for what we're talking about here. So first off, let's talk about what happens when you don't sideboard. Let's say that, we've got a 50-card deck, or we could have a 45-card deck if we go through our sideboards, right? Let's say we're looking for a particular 3 of. Well, what we're looking at here is even with the mulligan, if you don't sideboard, you are losing more than 4% of odds of drawing a given card. Like this is admittedly not a lot, but that kind of thing stacks up in a tournament environment. Like my preferred policy of just don't sideboard. Like I know that by going into this, I'm losing about 4% chance of seeing any given card, any given 3 of in my deck.
That being said, if your deck doesn't really care about one particular 3 of, and you just care about broader categories, then yeah, it's not as bad.
Right. But see, going into this with, say, the Balloona farm list, if you really want to see a Thunder Lane, you should really, really, really think about sideboarding. Like, that starts mattering in a high stakes tournament.
Uh-oh. We have no pixels.
The pixels are fine for me earlier.
Yeah, I'm getting a little droppy here.
Yeah,
It's
still working.
Okay, we're good now.
Sideboarding, if you can, does really have a positive effect on being able to see the cards you need to get things done. Something. If you have any kind of confidence, even if you only have confidence about 1 or 2 cards, that still helps.
Let's say
I like the distribution down here on the bottom as well, talking about when do you know when enough is too much.
Yeah. And so like we said, the common thing here is you want about 8 entry. Well, why do you want about 8 entry? This little chart down here at the bottom gives you the odds of being able to pull a given card, whatever qualifies as entry, like we said, if you have some number of those in your 45 card deck. Right? Now, on the low end, if you've got a silver bullet, you've got a 25% chance of seeing that. Like 1 in every 4 games, you'll get that in your opening hand, give or take.
Which is not bad when you think about it.
Yeah, like the silver bullet generally not really something that you want to see all the time. Preferably there's something you can search up, but there's something that you want to be able to find in an emergency, in a bad situation. Like you could actually almost go the other way and say you really don't want to see the silver bullet in your opening hand. And so you could actually look at this and say, all right, well, 25% of the time, assuming I have to take a mulligan, have one of these in my hand. The math doesn't quite work out that way, but you can see where this is going. Like that's one of those things where it's like, if you're running Tempest, you really don't want to see a grubber in your opening hand, because it's just like, well, that's less good.
Or you don't want to see your only grubber in your opening hand, rather.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now take a look at the difference here between the first copy and the second copy, right? We jump all the way from 25% to 44%.
That's like almost double.
It's a 19% increase. That's huge. Look at the next step, 44 to 58. Okay, that's 14.5. That's still a large one. Then from 58.5 to 69.5. Okay, that's 11.
10 and 11.
Okay, now we're getting down to 6. Now we're getting down to 5. Now what's happening here? This is a term that anyone who has played World of Warcraft before is well familiar with. It's called diminishing returns.
So you see this 9 and this 94%. That's why you run 9 penny lanes.
To have a 94% chance. But
except it matters the order, but yeah.
Sure, but is 9 penny lanes truly correct when that last penny lane is only giving you about a 2.4% chance additional to draw it?
Yes.
Right. Now,
it
is worth noting here that this is specifically discussing what happens during game startup. And this is, again, assuming 6 cards drawn. Maybe 6 is not right for you. Maybe you need to see 7. But you can see that the marginal advantage of adding another copy of entry between 8 and 9 is tiny. It's small. It's like pip-sized.
Yep.
Compared to the difference between 1 copy and 2. And at some point you have to look at this and say, well, do I really, really, really care about the, 2% chance, if that I get by adding another copy? I could run something else. I could run more Thunderlanes. And you always want to run more Thunderlanes, because Thunderlane is very, very good at rearranging faces.
Sure. Look at what the Royal Tudor whitelist was running in core prior to Continentals this year, right? That deck was only running 5 entry if you were counting the options for white, and only 3 entry if you were counting the options for blue.
That's pretty spicy.
That's pretty spicy, but there were reasons for it, right? 2 of those 5 pieces of entry for white could be tutored with Celestia herself. And even if you weren't tutoring, even if you weren't searching for those 2 particular pieces, every additional card that you would search out of your deck, or every additional card that you would draw, would reduce your total population size. Remember, that's the deck number of cards left in the deck, meaning that your odds of drawing any single card left within that deck would increase. So while you can use this calculator and look at cards that I would have in my opening hand, cards I would draw by turn 2, cards that I would draw by turn 5, assuming I'm only drawing 1 card per turn, you can do any of that and that's fine. There are extenuating circumstances. There are always modifiers to this.
Right.
What is this, D&D?
Yes.
Right. Like, we can go and look at some of the old decks of yore. Like, we did an analysis on this for some of the real terrors back in the day, where you had to ruthlessly optimize every single card slot, because that's what the stakes were. Tantabuse, for example. There were 7 different ways to tutor up a given troublemaker. They weren't all direct, but you could do it. And that's much, 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 much better than 3.
How about decks like Thorax, for example, right? Thorax runs 3 copies of cards like Birds of a Feather and Trihorn Bunyip and Antoine. Those cards are all spectacular. However, Thorax also has a tendency to run some number of copies of adoption options. This is something else to bear in mind. Certain cards can find other cards. They might be AT expensive, more AT expensive to, get than just drawing them naturally. But if it's increasing your odds from 3 copies, which is 58.5% in an opening hand, to 5 copies, which is 77.8% in your opening hand, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Like, adoption, any kind of tutor automatically counts as another copy of the thing that you're looking for. And
you might not be able to play them at the same time, but yes.
Right. But in terms of combo, it counts as another copy of the thing that you're looking for. It does make it more expensive. Maybe it costs a resource that you have to wait a turn cycle to go, use. But it's still very, big. And in cases like Celestia, it's what do you need to do to trigger the possibility of being able to tutor up more?
Right. Cheese, any other comments on hypergeometric distribution or calculation?
Nope.
Right. So you can look at this and just be like, I really want a 3rd copy of this power card. And then you decide that, going from 8 entry to 7 doesn't hurt that bad, I guess.
I've done 7 entry.
Sure.
Or you could go the other way and just be like, this is going to be a rough meta for me.
Calm Soul says some more puck wedgies. Yes, exactly.
Yes, always more puck wedgies. And you can go the other way. You can be like, you know what, this seems rough. I really want to guarantee that I'm gonna like get this and go up to 10 entry. You have to play like 1 in every 25 games effectively. You're gonna fail. That's pretty low.
I take those odds. I do take those odds.
You've taken much worse odds than that.
I've taken much worse odds than that. Okay, so you know the type of math and the type of even distribution that you have to use within a game when a random choice has to be. You also know the type of math that you can use when building your deck initially to be sure that you have the right number of copies of the right type of card. And you say, I'm all set. I have watched the Tournament Math for Nerds stream, and I'm ready to go compete in the tournament. And so you go to Continentals.
And we're like, hi, welcome to Swiss rounds 1 through 7.
And you go, what? And we explain. You see, in a Swiss tournament, there are a set number of rounds that everyone gets to play regardless of their record, and then we do a top cut. And you say, how is the top cut tournament? Well, it's by score. You know, how many games did you end up winning? How many matches did you win? And the question that everyone always asks is, how many matches do I need to win in order to guarantee myself a top cut spot? Guess what? There's a calculator for that too. Asterisk.
This one's pretty good, admittedly.
Do we have a slide transition?
Nope.
No, the presentation was actually started before that modification was made. So when you go look at this, there's going to be a red line down the middle of this going, about where does the top cut fall? Well, it turns out it starts in the middle of the 12 people going into the tournament. 8 of you will proceed, 4 of you will not. And then it goes through the... It actually gets kind of difficult here because you can't really tell which side it's going to go through. You could win your first game and end up losing every subsequent one, which is unfortunate. But then as you proceed on, it will become more and more apparent where the cut line lies. Like, obviously, the person who is going undefeated is going to be very lucky, and if you take just endless defeats, it's going to be very difficult it's going to be very difficult to make the top cut.
Right. Swiss triangles are very useful to be able to identify the percentage of players that, given normal circumstances and normal game outcomes, are going to make the top cut. In order to do this, you need to know the number of players total participating in the tournament at the start. You need to know the number of players that will be allowed in the next phase of the tournament, which would be the actual top cut, how many players are allowed there. And you need to know the number of rounds that are being done. So, working with an example here, Continentals this year had 16 players participating in person. We had a cut to top 8, and we ran 7 rounds.
7. Mm-hmm.
A Swiss triangle calculator will tell us that, assuming that there were no ties in this event, it would be assumed that if every game played out naturally, there would be 1 undefeated player, 2 players at 5 and 2, 3 players at 5 and 2, 4 players at 4 and 3, 4 players at 3 and 4, 3 players at 2 and 5, and 1 player at 0 and 7. Well, we can do math. We can add up 1 player undefeated, 3 players 5 and 2, 4 players 4 and 3. Hey, that's 8. That's a magic number.
That's in fact the number of people who get to go to top 8.
Okay, so this makes sense. We know that at the end of the 7th round, if we have managed to achieve a score of 4 and 3, then we are guaranteed to make it into the top 8. Right?
Right?
Right? Wrong.
Well, maybe. Because it turns out, if you actually go look at the scores for Everfree, no one was undefeated.
You might also take a look and see that some players, in fact, had ties.
Obligatory hissing.
How dare you tie?
Our tournament rules allow players to determine their outcome by playing a game or by one player conceding to the other or both players mutually agreeing to tie the game. Now, in terms of points that a player earns towards their record to progress to the next phase of a tournament, a win is worth 3 points. A loss is worth 0 points. A tie is worth 1 point. That means it is slightly more valuable for players to tie a game than it is to lose a game.
Well,
What?
It is if you're going to lose, but you have the opportunity. Sorry, I should state this in a different way. If you know you cannot win,
There
it
you go.
is better for you to force a tie than it is for you to just concede.
Yep.
Like, I have been in positions where I've looked at the tournament bracket and said, okay, I am right on the border of getting in. Whoever wins this match is guaranteed to get in. If you lose, you are definitely not getting in. And it just so happened that the way the game progressed allowed me to force a tie. And then, as it turns out, the fact that I did that caused both players to make the top cut.
And you could have saved yourself 35 minutes of stress by doing that map at the start of the round and saying, you know, if we both tie right now, we'll both make it into top 8.
You're actually not allowed to do that because collusion.
That is not collusion. That is completely legal and has been the entire time this game has existed.
Kind of.
No.
Anyway.
Not kind of.
Anyway, if everyone shows up with 7 points after 7 rounds, I'm going to have questions.
And this is why I say asterisk about using the Swiss Triangle Calculator, because intentional draws are a valid tournament strategy that can be used in a Tier 3 or Tier 2 tournament where there is still a cut to a top cut. And players who know this standing and simply want to make it in and don't care about their position within said top cut might see the value in doing that.
It's going to be very, very rare that you get into this position except in the absolute final round of the tournament.
Correct.
Yeah, it's the only time that you can actually kind of know what will happen.
And that actually was the case with me. That was the last game of the Swiss progression.
Also, if too many other games do that,
yeah, then things get bad.
Then it pushes people
then
down.
It starts going into the tiebreakers, and if you go far enough down, it gets random. And
which is exactly why I mentioned that the calculator can't account for all of that.
Yeah, and you really do not want to rely on the die roll to get into the top cut. So don't pull that one out unless you are absolutely confident that it is the correct answer.
Now, of course, there is a certain win percentage that does guarantee you.
Yes.
Right.
Regardless of what anyone else does.
Right. If you have 6 wins in a tournament with 7 rounds and a top cut,
you're probably good.
You are 100% good.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if you have a loss or a draw for your second one. In fact, if you have 5 wins,
yeah, I think
it still does not matter.
Yeah, I think it is all the way to 5. And then it's the 4s where it starts mattering.
Correct. So, take a look at general Swiss Triangle progression. take a look and see if you can find a tool. There are a few of them out there that will allow you to account for intentional draws as well. By the way, this is part of the reason why we will often show tournament standings the second to last round, so players can see exactly where they are positioned.
I mean, the neat part about having the whole thing run on a computer is you can just throw the standings up on the monitor.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's great.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more math lesson. What have we got?
Flipping cards.
Just one more? Okay.
Just one more. Yeah, so you know how your deck has a flip average? You're like, I know my opponent will flip a 3, and my flip average is 3.5. Therefore, I should have this face-off. It's like, well, kind of depends on why you have that 3.5.
Right.
So, go ahead.
So, Ponyhead has the power histogram. This is at the top if you're just looking at a deck, or it's at the bottom if you're in edit mode. And what this does is this says how many cards in your deck have the given power. Now, you need to be careful because there are certain things like the one entry cards from it was New Dawn, right?
That was New Dawn, yes.
There are things that flip for different than what's on the card.
Right. It says 1, it actually flips for 3. If you're running Yuna, well, stuff gets complicated.
Yes.
But Ponyhead helpfully displays this. It also displays this flip average. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't really believe the flip average. Like, I believe the flip average is 4, but that's not representing the whole situation here. It's really not.
You have a lot of 2s.
What that deck is gonna do is it's probably gonna flip a 2, 3, or 4. But it might also flip a 5 or a 6 or 7.
It better not flip a 5. I'm going to have questions.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. All right, so yeah, your flip average may be 4. But it turns out that you probably shouldn't rely on that because you're generally not going to flip a 6 or a 7. You're generally going to flip a 4 or below.
I'm trying to think of what deck that is, and at first I was going to say it's Balloona Farm, but that can't be right because it has no 5, so it has no Thunderlanes. I don't know what deck that is.
Also, for the one person back in 2014, this is why you can't use flipping a card to determine who goes first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Godot says, you mean my 3 staves aren't representative of the flip average of my deck full of 1-drops? You are correct, sir.
Yes.
And heck, there's more to that. Go ahead, Cheese.
I was going to say, and so the other thing is to be very aware of what's in your hand, what's in play. What have you flipped previously? If you know all your zeros are already gone, then you don't got to worry about them. And this was actually pretty common back when Paper Twi was a thing, because that'd be your lowest flip by far in a purple deck.
All right.
But if you're sitting on 3 of them in play,
yeah, it's well, I ain't flipping a 0.
Yeah, if you know where all your Forest Owls and Paper Twi's are, then you don't have to worry about flipping a 0.
Right. This is going to be most useful when you're talking about cards whose power lies towards the extremes of this power histogram.
Yeah, 0, 1s, and 7s.
Right. We have 3 different decks here. And the first 2 have these weird kind of bimodal distributions where you're going to flip a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4. And then there's this last one where it quotes a flip average of 5, and the power histogram is very clearly biased towards the high side, where it's just
it's kind of a linear slope here.
Yeah. Hi, I'm going to be flipping very high numbers like all the time. And so if you go into a face-off with that deck on the right and you're down like 2 power, you're just like,
Probably fine.
I'm gonna be fine. Because odds are you're gonna flip something big. Whereas if you go into that same face-off with the deck in the middle, you're like, that's pretty sus.
Why are you facing off with the deck in the middle? That's Royal Tutor. I know what that 1-0 is. That's the one Flim and Flam.
Okay, all right. So what's the deck on the left then?
Actually, it can't be that. There's more threes than that. I don't know what that is. What is that? What is that deck? 0.
Who is that deck?
One.
A 1 of a 0.
I have to think about this. This is tricky.
The one on the left could be a lot of decks. All the 2s mean a lot of friends. But it's the one on the left is like Thorax? No, it doesn't run 10 6s.
No, or the 7s. It's got to be a farm deck. It's the only thing that would have that many 6s and 7s, so it's some kind of farm. And the 7s are going to be 3 Grogars and 3 Staffs.
Yeah.
That's so many 2s, though.
Oh, it's the Bloona farm.
It can't be Bloona farm. It doesn't have 5s. It has no Thunderlanes.
Did it run Thunderlanes?
Of course it ran Thunderlane.
Why would you not run Thunderlane? Thunderlane rearranged faces.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that it's...
The 0 is forcing around.
I'm going to say it might be the Royal Tutor farm thing with Raptor, Razor, and Novo.
The left one?
I don't know where Ara found these.
So spoil. Well, okay, they're not all they're not all invitational stacks.
Sure, of course.
Okay, so would you just like the answer key here?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. The right one is Tom's farm list. The middle one is the Thorax farm list, and the the right one is Grillcord.
The left one is Tom's farm list. The right one is Grogar farm. That makes more sense. And then the middle one is what? Just Thorax?
Thorax. The 0
Oh,
is
yeah,
correctly
Angel.
called out is horsing around.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay. Fair enough. But yeah, take a look at this. This is interesting, right? The right deck tells you that your average flip is going to be 5. However, the 2 numbers that individually you are most likely to flip are 6 and 7.
Right. So you can I think reasonably look at this list and just assume that you will be flipping at least a 4.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the time you are going to be flipping at least a 4 here. And the flip average is useful to kind of guide your like really base level intuition. But especially when you have a bimodal deck where there's 2 peaks, like the 2 ones on the left, you can't necessarily trust the flip average. I think I quoted to someone, okay, here's a deck. Your flip average is either 1 or 5.
Exactly.
And this is where we get into mean, median, and mode as viable terms to look at.
Right. Like when you start talking about these kind of terms on a like statistical basis, you have to start asking very deep questions about, okay, so
It's good to know. Go ahead.
Yeah, the histograms, of course, tell you the full story because we don't have complicated situations as you might see out in like real world fuzzy applications of this. Here, it's fairly easy to look at these and just be like, okay, so really my flip average is going to be around 3 or maybe 6. Or, 1.5 or 4-ish. Or I'm fairly confident that I can just rely on this being at least a 4, probably a 5.
There's not much better you can do than just showing the histogram.
Right. So you can take a look at this and get a much more instinctive feel for, yeah, I'm good here. Like, I'm gonna flip a big card, or that's a big number. I got a lot of twos though.
Sure, look at the middle one, right? The middle one says your average is 2.54, but your median and your mode are both going to be 2.
This leads you to be sad.
This does lead you to be sad.
Of course, that particular deck doesn't care so much about the flip average because it's just like, I've got a big, like, whiny bug that is probably north of 7 power and just, like, shows up and mopes on your doorstep until you go away.
Sure. Look at the deck all the way on the left, though, right? This one says that the flip average is almost 4. Your median is 3. Your mode is 2.
That's pretty sus. It puts the sus in Pegasus, in fact.
That is funny. A difference in average and mode.
So, go break out your pre-algebra textbooks again.
You make me pick up my college level stats textbook. I actually had to look at that thing.
Are you mad?
Yes.
Well, every now and then we actually produce a video or a stream that is useful to go back and reference later. It's been a while since we did it, but, you know...
This might be one of them.
This might be one of them.
This is going to be terrifying if this gets out and, like, other people from other random card games are just like, hey, look at these, like, pony nerds.
Yeah, something tells me Richard Garfield is not going to be coming in here impressed with what we're doing.
Probably not.
Ah, see, look, already in Discord, Elfinpin, someone remind me to rewatch this stream later because I always need help with math.
Probably be good if we had a if we had a just textual version of it.
Sure.
I mean, there's always the slides.
Well, there are the slides. It's true.
We'll send the slides. Yeah, I made slides. Slides are great. We can probably put chapter markers in the YouTube video so you can find which bit you want.
I am aware he has a PhD in combinatorics, Godot. I am aware.
That's a decent PhD to have for cards.
And when he starts making good games again, then I will use his full title.
Keyforge was kind of fun.
Bird.
Richie, I'm kidding. Love you, boo. I just called him Richie. Extremely.
Okay.
Such disrespect.
Anyway,
I think that's going to wrap up our discussion on this topic for today. We would like to give a big shout out to all our patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your regular support. If you aren't currently a patron and you enjoy what we do, please consider donating, as doing so enables us to continue making content like this and lets you earn some great perks as a bonus. If you have comments or questions you'd like to send our way, feel free to reach out to us through Facebook, Twitter, or email. If you're a patron, you can also chat live with us on Slack any day, anytime. Finally, if you're looking to watch any of our previous videos, including tournament recordings, you can find them on our YouTube channel, linked just below the stream. With all that said, thank you to each and every one of our viewers, both here and now and watching this recording later. We are, as always, Commentary is Magic. I am, as always, Grandpaws.
Big cheese.
Starcat. Ivory Starlight is here in spirit. I was going to make a snarky comment about being awake because I have been kept awake by work this entire week.
Which means if someone from the Sim channel pings you at like 2 a.m.
They're going to get hissed at.
Right, correct. But you'll respond.
No, probably
I'm going to be I'm going to be looking at work. Like, and
that's
if
even worse.
my work computer makes noise, I'm just going to hiss at it. Just endless hissing. That's all. The hissing booth is broken due to how much hissing it has been doing.
Yep. Anyway, we'll see you all at Ciderfest.
Yeet.
Bye.